Got the air, the NBA announced that they are going to be canceling the rest of this season, shocking players, owners, and everyone else involved. NCAA announced yesterday that they were going to actually continue with March Madness with no fans. 24 hours later, they announced there will be no March Madness at all. They're actually suspending all spring, winter, and spring NCAA championships. Not only that, Disneyland, for the fourth time in its history, will be closing on Friday. State of emergency declared by Mayor Bill de Blasio in New York City. We're also seeing the exact same thing happen in the state of Wisconsin. We're seeing it happen in other cities all across this country. It has been an absolute stunning 24 hours as we have seen this nation trying to figure out what is going on with the coronavirus. Here's also part of the problem that we have. Testing. So far, only 11,000 tests have been administered across the country. South Korea, they're testing 10,000 people a day. That's how absolutely crazy this whole thing is. Folks are trying to get up to date about what's going on, how this thing is going to follow. I also told you, again, NBA canceled their season. National Hockey League also canceled their season. State basketball championships are being canceled as well. Broadway will go dark until April 13th. This thing is real, and it is actually stunning. Here's Donald Trump last night, supposedly trying to calm the nation, an Oval Office address, and all it did is add more confusion to what is taking place in America.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak that started in China and is now spreading throughout the world. Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic. We have been in frequent contact with our allies, and we are marshaling the full power of the federal government and the private sector to protect the American people. This is the most aggressive and comprehensive effort to confront a foreign virus in modern history. I am confident that by counting and continuing to take these tough measures, we will significantly reduce the threat to our citizens, and we will ultimately and expeditiously defeat this virus. From the beginning of time, nations and people have faced unforeseen challenges, including large-scale and very dangerous health threats. This is the way it always was and always will be. It only matters how you respond, and we are responding with great speed and professionalism. Our team is the best anywhere in the world. At the very start of the outbreak, we instituted sweeping travel restrictions on China and put in place the first federally mandated quarantine in over 50 years. We declared a public health emergency and issued the highest level of travel warning on other countries as the virus spread its horrible infection. And taking early, intense action, we have seen dramatically fewer cases of the virus in the United States than are now present in Europe. The European Union failed to take the same precautions and restrict travel from China and other hotspots. As a result, a large number of new clusters in the United States were seeded by travelers from Europe. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. The new rules will go into effect Friday at midnight. These restrictions will be adjusted subject to conditions on the ground. There will be exemptions for Americans who have undergone appropriate screenings, and these prohibitions will not only apply to the tremendous amount of trade and cargo, but various other things as we get approval. Anything coming
Right, folks, here's what happened there. First of all, they had to walk back 3 things immediately after Trump gave his speech. How in the hell do you do that when it's a written speech? You check your facts first. Then, of course, Mike Pence goes on television today and says, "Oh no, we're not restricting travel to all Europeans." But he also said cargo as well. But then came back and said, "Well, no, actually, I don't mean cargo." This is okay. If y'all want to actually see how somebody gives a speech, to address a pandemic. This today was former Vice President Joe Biden.
And the threat it poses to our health, our loved ones, our families, our livelihoods. You know, I know people are worried. My thoughts are with those who are directly fighting this virus. Those infected, families that have suffered a loss, first responders and healthcare providers who are putting themselves on the line as I speak for others. I'd like to thank those who are already making sacrifices to protect us, whether that's self-quarantine themselves or canceling events and closing campuses. Because whether or not you're affected or know someone who is infected or have been in contact with an infected person, this is going to require a national response. Not just from our elected leaders or our public health officials, but from all of us. We must, all of us, follow the guidelines of the health officials and take appropriate protections to protect ourselves and critically to protect others, especially those who are most at risk for this disease. It's going to mean making some radical changes in our personal behaviors. More frequent and more thorough hand washing, staying home from work if you're ill, but also altering the deeply ingrained habits in our country like handshakes and hugs, avoiding large public gatherings. That's why earlier this week, on the recommendation of officials, my campaign canceled election night rallies that we had planned to hold in Cleveland, Ohio. We're also reimagining the format for large crowd events we had planned in Chicago and Miami in the coming days. And we'll continue to assess and adjust how we conduct our campaign as we move forward and find new ways to share our message with the public while putting health and safety of the American people first, above everything else. Yesterday, we announced a Public Health Advisory Committee of experts who will continue to counsel my campaign and me, help guide our decisions on the steps to minimize further risks. But we will lead by science. The World Health Organization now has officially declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Downplaying it, being overly dismissive, or spreading misinformation is only going to hurt us and further advantage the spread of the disease. But neither should we panic or fall back on xenophobia. Labeling COVID-19 a foreign virus does not displace accountability for the misjudgments that have been taken thus far by the Trump administration. Let me be crystal clear. The coronavirus does not have a political affiliation. It will infect Republicans, Independents, and Democrats alike, and will not discriminate based on national origin, race, gender, or zip code. It will touch people in positions of power as well as most vulnerable in our society. And it will not stop. Banning all travel from Europe or any other part of the world may slow it, but as we've seen, it will not stop it. And travel restrictions based on favoritism and politics rather than risk will be counterproductive. This disease could impact every nation and any person on the planet. We need a plan about how we're going to aggressively manage here at home. You know, you all do know, the American people have the capacity to meet this moment. We're going to face this with the same spirit that has guided us through previous crises. And we'll come together as a nation. We'll look out for one another and do our part as citizens. We have to harness the ingenuity of our scientists and the resourcefulness of our people. And we have to help the world to drive coordinated global strategy, not shut ourselves off from the world. Protecting the health and safety of the American people is the most important job of any president. And unfortunately, this virus laid bare the severe shortcomings of the current administration.
Again, that was Joe Biden speaking earlier today, very critical of Donald Trump's administration and how they have handled this pandemic. A little bit later, Senator Bernie Sanders, he spoke.
Thanks very much, everybody, for being here. In the last few days, we have seen the crisis of the coronavirus continue to grow exponentially here in the United States and around the world. And we have witnessed a global economic meltdown which will impact millions of workers in our own country. In terms of potential deaths, and in terms of the economic impact on our economy, the crisis we face from the coronavirus is on a scale of a major war, and we must act accordingly. Nobody knows what the number of fatalities may end up being, or the number of people who may get ill, and we all hope that that number will be as low as possible. But we also have to face the truth, and that is that the number of casualties may actually be even higher than what the armed forces experienced in World War II. In other words, we have a major crisis, and we must act accordingly. Therefore, it is an absolute moral imperative that our response as a government, as a society, as a business community, and as individual citizens meet the enormity of this crisis. As people stay or work from home and are directed to quarantine, it will be easy for us to feel like we are all alone. I'm working at home, not in my office. Or that we must only worry about ourselves and think that everybody else should fend for themselves. But in my view, that would be a tragic and dangerous mistake. If there ever was a time in the modern history of our country when we are all in this together, this is that moment. Now is the time for solidarity. Now is the time to come together with love and compassion for all, including the most vulnerable people in our society who will face this pandemic from a health perspective or face it from an economic perspective.
On Capitol Hill today, Congressional Black Caucus members and others also spoke on the issue, including California Senator Kamala Harris.
Jill Brand, for your longstanding leadership in the United States Senate on the issue of paid family leave and so many other issues that affect our families. Here's the bottom line. Paid sick leave will save lives. Paid sick leave will keep communities safer. It's just that basic. It has always been an issue of workers' rights. It has always been an issue of what is the right public policy approach to supporting workers, understanding that every human being at one time or another will get sick, and why should they have to suffer, knowing that they either will be able to stay at home and tend to their illness or put food on the table and feed their babies or pay the rent. But with the coronavirus, it has become even more stark as an issue, which is literally there are people in America, in fact, 2/3 of low-income workers do not have paid sick leave. And when presented with the issue of whether they will stay at home while they're sick or feed their babies or keep a roof over their head, it is logical to believe that they will go to work so that they can keep taking care of their family. So in the midst of this public health crisis, let us understand that one of the most significant and effective ways that we're going to slow down this virus is to make sure that when people are sick, they stay at home, that they self-quarantine. So let's unpack the math on that. If you're sick and we don't want it to spread through the community, we want people to stay at home. If you are a low-income worker who does not have paid sick leave, if you're facing the choice of whether to feed your children or go to work, you're going to choose to feed your children, and that means going to work and perhaps spreading the virus. So what the House is proposing is not only right in terms of what we need as public policy in the United States, in terms of how we treat our workers, but this is a very smart way to address what is currently a very significant public health crisis in the United States of America. So again, I applaud Senator Gillibrand. I'd also just raise one more point. I serve on the Senate Homeland Security Committee, which is an oversight committee. And of course, part of our oversight includes over OPM. There are 2.7 million federal workers, and we have been asking the administration what they are going to do to ensure that those federal workers are receiving the kinds of protections they need as they do their job of working on behalf of the American people, often interacting every day with the American public. We have yet to hear a clear plan. Among the people who work for the Department of Homeland Security, again, we have oversight over that in the Committee on Homeland Security, TSA agents. We already have a couple of TSA agents out of San Jose, California, who have tested positive. And we have asked then Ken Cuccinelli and the administration, what is your plan to make sure that the TSA workers who come...
All right, well, that was Senator Kamala Harris there. What is quite interesting is that Senator Mitch McConnell made clear they were not going to take up the House bill they're moving forward on. He also said they were going to go to a recess next week, but he got blown up even by his fellow Republicans. And now they're not going to be on a recess next week. They're going to actually be in D.C. doing the damn work you should be doing. So let's break this thing down. Joining me right now, my panel, Dr. Greg Carr. He's chairman of the Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. Also joining me is Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as joining us via Skype is Erica Savage Wilson. She is host of Savage Politics Podcast. Mustafa, I want to start with you. When you look at, again, how all of this is being handled, when you look at the fact that Congress was stunned today to find out that only 10,000 tests nationwide have been conducted. When you hear Trump, Pence, and others talk about how this thing has not spread across America, first of all, we don't know that because you have not seen the wide testing. When you have private labs, and you only have a handful of labs across the country who can even conduct the testing. I was watching a clip of a doctor on MSNBC, one of their medical experts, who said she recommended to one of her clients to go get tested. She couldn't even get her to get tested. South Korea, only 50 million people in that country. They with a chart yesterday showing 3,700 people per million who have been tested, 5 per 1 million in the United States. They in South Korea, they are testing 10,000 people a day. Australia, they've set up drive-through testing zones. All of those different things that they're doing, and for some reason, these folks, this response is just utterly nonsensical.
It's lack of leadership. The president and his team had the opportunity for months to actually get the infrastructure in place in case this became a pandemic. If you look at across our country, and they played a role in this, we have medically underserved areas. We have physician deserts. So when we talk about the testing, we also have to talk about all of these communities of color, lower income communities that are already struggling in this space to actually have the basic infrastructure in place for folks to move in and be able to get the testing in place. Then we have to talk about the medical biases that have been traditionally in place as well. And address those questions as we move forward. But with all that being said, it all goes back to the president and his team and the lack of understanding of making sure that we actually have the right types of things that are in place.
Ray, this is leadership. And you either have leadership or you don't. What we're seeing from the administration, horrible leadership.
Oh, no, absolutely. Well, horrible leadership from the president for sure. Vice president, that's clear. I mean, anyone should be embarrassed watching that, what he stumbled through last night. And of course, now the stock market has officially entered a bear market. It's 20% below the high that it was at, so we have that. But if I was a high school teacher or a college teacher around the country, especially since it's going to be online for the foreseeable future, this is a perfect example of a civics lesson on of the country we live in. We talk about our country, but it's really state, local, and federal governments. So you see people taking the initiative, mayors, governors like Larry Hogan now, state of emergency in Maryland. As you said, the mayor of New York City closed down New York City. What's fascinating to me is that as we've been talking off air, we're in an unprecedented moment. I mean, here we are where, I just took the metro now, rush hour from Howard. Howard Hospital is going to be a place, as you say, Brother Mustafa, you know this better than we do, where the most vulnerable people are going to come. And they're already coming into Howard Hospital. I walked past Howard Hospital, got on the train. The train looked like a weekend, brother. It's rush hour on a Thursday afternoon, and I'm looking like we have no precedent for this. So the mayor of this city, state of emergency, schools closed. The president of the United States is exposing the fact that we live in a federated state, and people are stepping up and showing leadership based on experience. And finally, and you made this point off air, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it a little bit more, you know, Joe Biden's people, he inserted himself, and what we're seeing emerge is a clear contrast in this thing. And I hope you talk some more about the contrast even between the clips we saw. This man is completely overmatched in terms of Donald Trump.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Eric, it's real clear. I got a phone call at 5 a.m. this morning announcing that my niece's school will be closed today through March 20th. Universities all across the country doing the exact same thing. Dorms are shutting down. There are people who are on college campuses or in cities that are dominated by universities saying it's like a ghost town. Where people don't understand that has a direct impact on where you eat, on groceries, things along those lines. Because if people are clearing out, then you don't have those services. And what you're dealing with right now is a crisis of confidence from people in this administration. They told us last week, at the end of the week, we would have 1 million tests available. That's a lie. They had to actually say the day before that Friday deadline, oh, we're actually not going to have it. And a month was wasted. Literally, a month was wasted because you had Donald Trump, who refused to even acknowledge the truth behind this. He stood in front of the cameras and said, we got about 15 cases. We're going to soon be down to 0. He was telling people on Twitter, hey, great time to buy stocks. At one point on January 10th, he was even touting, oh, how the stock market gone up 11,000 in 3 years. And he was quoting Stuart Varney on Fox Business and how we've never seen this before. The Dow may hit 29,000, never in history. And then Trump literally ends saying things are going to get better. And it has gotten worse.
We've seen them only get exponentially worse. And the other thing I want to mention around this is that in terms of this regime, right, and I agree with my brothers, Dr. Ali and Dr. Carr, that what we are really literally seeing is incompetence in leadership from this regime, but also a lack of strategic planning, right? Remember, at the beginning of all of them coming into office, it was supposed to be this new type of leadership that was being ushered in, this new level of accountability, right? Drain the swamp. And so then also issuing all of these different attacks around media, and then also gutting people who should be serving, right, in these different seats to help us manage and get through a moment the way that we have, the one that we have right now. And then now there's no one left. There's only the liar in chief left. And then I want to just kind of peel back, as we've been talking about how we've seen states really act as presidents of their own state in terms of guidance and helping people really kind of move through this global pandemic crisis that we have, is that not only do we have kids that are leaving school, both in elementary, middle, high, and then on to college, but then when we think about that in terms of their families and the type of work that they have, think about those families who their job really does depend on them actually being present, that they don't have the benefit of being able to work from home. So now you have poor and low wealth people that are really kind of caught between, well, what is it that I can do to make ends meet, right? And then you have kids at home too that now they are, even more anxious and more stressed out because they're at home. That's another mouth to feed. So we're seeing this happening in schools and also for kids that are in college, because some of the kids that are at these Ivy League schools where, tuition is $80,000 a year, that now that those schools are closed and they're going to an online model, if those are first-gen college students, where are those college students going? They're already food insecure. So this just really highlights what happens when in an election, someone chooses to shake up, and then 60 million people get behind a person saying that they're going to shake up the system for a person that is shown over and over again, both in their business practices and any other medium that they've been in, that they don't have any type of real leadership qualities. This is what we end up with. It's now really every state, every community for itself to really protect the citizens.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. How did we even get to this? Where did this thing even come from? Not all these conspiracy theories you're hearing out there. Well, the folks at Vox Media put together this really, really great video. And it was sent to me today. And I said, you know what, let's go ahead and play this. And it just really lays out where the coronavirus came from and how this whole thing originated. You don't want to miss this, so check this out.
When health officials in China admitted they had a problem.
Health authorities have activated their most serious response level
after an outbreak of a new type of viral pneumonia
in central China.
A rapidly growing number of people were developing a dry cough and fever before getting pneumonia. And for some, it turned fatal. Doctors have named the disease COVID-19, or coronavirus disease 2019, indicating that a type of virus is causing the illness. When they tried to trace its origin, they found a likely source: this food market in Wuhan. Out of the first 41 patients, 27 had been here. It wasn't conclusive evidence, but Chinese officials quickly shut down the market. They had seen this happen before at a place just like this.
Health officials are trying to get a grip on an alarming outbreak of SARS.
The virus originated in mainland China.
Has spread across the country.
The disease had been festering for months in southern China.
In 2002, a coronavirus had emerged at a very similar market in southern China. It eventually reached 29 countries and killed nearly 800 people. Now, 18 years later, this coronavirus is in at least 71 countries and has already killed over 3,100 people. So what do these markets have to do with the coronavirus outbreak, and why is it happening in China? A lot of the viruses that make us sick actually originate in animals. Some of the viruses that cause the flu come from birds and pigs. HIV/AIDS comes from chimpanzees. The deadly Ebola virus likely originates in bats. And in the case of the 2019 coronavirus, there's some evidence it went from a bat to a pangolin before infecting a human. While viruses are very good at jumping between species, it's rare for a deadly one to make this journey all the way to humans. That's because it would need all these hosts to encounter each other at some point. That's where the Wuhan market comes in. It's a wet market. A kind of place where live animals are slaughtered and sold for consumption.
It was not a surprise at all, and I think that it was not a surprise to many scientists.
Peter Lee is a professor and expert on China's animal trade.
The cages stacked above one over another. Animals at the bottom are often soaked with all kinds of liquid, animal excrement, pus, blood, or whatever the liquid they're receiving from the animals above.
That's exactly how a virus can jump from one animal to another. If that animal then comes in contact with or is consumed by a human, the virus could potentially infect them. And if the virus then spreads to other humans, it causes an outbreak. Wet markets are scattered all over the world, but the ones in China are particularly well known because they offer a wide variety of animals, including wildlife. This is a sample menu reportedly from the market in Wuhan. These animals are from all over the world, and each one has the potential to carry its own viruses to the market. The reason all these animals are in the same market is because of a decision China's government made decades ago. Back in the 1970s, China was falling apart. Famine had killed more than 36 million people, and the communist regime, which controlled all food production, was failing to feed its more than 900 million people. In 1978, on the verge of collapse, the regime gave up this control and allowed private farming. While large companies increasingly dominated the production of popular foods like pork and poultry, some smaller farmers turned to catching and raising wild animals as a way to sustain themselves.
At the very beginning, it was mostly peasant household backyard operation of turtles, for example. That's how wildlife farming started to get off the ground.
And since it started to feed and sustain people, the Chinese government backed it.
So it was imperative for the government to encourage people to to make a living through whatever productive activities they can find themselves in. You can lift yourself out of poverty. No matter what you are doing, that's okay.
But then in 1988, the government made a decision that changed the shape of wildlife trade in China. They enacted the Wildlife Protection Law, which designated the animals as resources owned by the state and protected people engaged in the utilization of wildlife resources.
That's one of the most devastating problems of the law, because if you designate the wildlife as a natural resource, that means it is something you can use for human benefits.
The law also encouraged the domestication and breeding of wildlife. And with that, an industry was born. Small local farms turned into industrial-sized operations. For example, this bear farm started with just 3 and eventually grew to more than 1,000 bears. Bigger populations meant greater chances that a sick animal could spread disease. Farmers were also raising a wide variety of animals, which meant more viruses on the farms. Nonetheless, these animals were funneled into the wet markets for profit. While this legal wildlife farming industry started booming, it simultaneously provided cover for an illegal wildlife industry. Endangered animals like tigers, rhinoceroses, and pangolins were trafficked into China. By the early 2000s, these markets were teeming with wild animals when the inevitable happened.
The latest on the deadly SARS virus, the worldwide death toll up again today.
China has reported more than 1,400 cases of infection nationwide.
It is what health officials have feared all along.
In 2003, the SARS outbreak was traced to a wet market here in southern China. Scientists found traces of the virus in farmed civet cats. Chinese officials quickly shut down the markets and banned wildlife farming. But just a few months after the outbreak, the Chinese government declared 54 species of wildlife animals, including civet cats, legal to farm again. By 2004, the wildlife farming industry was worth an estimated 100 billion yuan, and it exerted significant influence over the Chinese government.
Wildlife farming industry was tiny in China's gigantic GDP, but the industry has enormous lobbying capability.
It's because of this influence that the Chinese government has allowed these markets to grow over the years. In 2016, for example, the government sanctioned the farming of some endangered species like tigers and pangolins. By 2018, the wildlife industry had grown to 148 billion yuan and had developed clever marketing tactics to keep the markets around.
The industry has been promoting these wildlife animals as tonic products, as bodybuilding, as sex enhancing, and of course as disease fighting. None of the claims can hold water.
Yet these products became popular with an influential portion of China's population.
The majority of the people in China do not eat wildlife animals. Those people who consume these wildlife animals are the rich and the powerful, a small minority.
It's this minority that the Chinese government chose to favor over the safety of the rest of its population.
These parochial commercial interests of small number of wildlife eaters are hijacking China's national interest.
Soon after the coronavirus outbreak, the Chinese government shut down thousands of wet markets and temporarily banned wildlife trade again. Organizations around the world have been urging China to make the ban permanent. Chinese social media in particular has been flooded with petitions to ban it for good this time. In response, China is reportedly amending the wildlife protection law that encouraged wildlife farming decades ago. But unless these actions lead to a permanent ban on wildlife farming, outbreaks like this one are bound to happen again.
We're going to have to help those small farmers also, because they don't have any.
Again, that was a video from Vox Media. Absolutely fascinating to understand how this whole thing started. All right, folks, back to that Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, so a lot of y'all are always asking me about some of the pocket squares that I wear. Now, Robert don't have one on. Nope. Now, I don't particularly like the white pocket squares. I don't like even the silk ones. And so I was reading GQ magazine a number of years ago, and I saw this guy who had this pocket square here, and it looks like a flower. This is called a shibori pocket square. This is how the Japanese Japanese manipulate the fabric to create this sort of flower effect. So I'm going to take it out and then place it in my hand so you see what it looks like. And I said, man, this is pretty cool. And so I tracked down, it took me a year to find a company that did it. And so they make these about 47 different colors. And so I love them because, again, as men, we don't have many accessories to wear, so we don't have many options. And so this is really a pretty cool pocket square. Now, what I love about this here is you saw when it's in the pocket, you know, it gives you that flower effect like that. But if I wanted to also, unlike other, because if I flip it and turn it over, it actually gives me a different type of texture. And so therefore it gives me a different look. So there you go. So if you actually want to get one of these Shibori pocket squares, we have them in 47 different colors. All you got to do is go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All right, so first of all, that graphic is way too small. So tomorrow we're going to run it right down here all across the screen. So it's RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All you got to do is go to my website and you can actually get this. Now, for those of you who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club, there's a discount for you to get our pocket squares. That's why you also got to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. And so that's what we want you to do. And so it's pretty cool. So if you want to jazz your look up, you can do that. In addition, y'all see me with some of the feather pocket squares. My sister, who's a designer, she actually makes these. They're all custom made. So when you also go to the website, you can also order one of the customized feather pocket squares right there at RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So please do so. And of course, that goes to support the show. And again, if you're a Bring the Funk fan club member, you get a discount. This is why you should join the fan club. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. There are 145,000 confirmed coronavirus cases internationally. 5,408 folks have died. 70,920 have recovered. You see, we have not even ramped up to having maximum testing in the United States. Yet you heard the news conference there. They're working with private labs and public companies to actually do that. Joining us right now is Dr. Tashaka Cunningham, a molecular biologist who studied virology as well. Dr. Cunningham, how you doing?
Great to be with you, Roland.
So your company, what testing is your company involved in?
Our company actually does genetic testing mostly in the mental health arena. Right now, we're developing genetic diagnostics to look at things like predisposition for PTSD and other mental health disorders. But as a scientist, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself right now, just as a citizen scientist, I'm just looking for ways to be helpful. I mean, I've had a number of my colleagues call me and ask me, what they could do with regard to testing. So, I've got, lines out to all the folks I know. Our group is trying to, do our best to help to see what we can do in the context of the expertise we have to add to the capabilities of testing in our general area. And I think it's got to be sort of this all hands on deck situation because there are these shortages. I'm not really in the business of the blame game. I mean, I think there were missteps on a lot of different parts from China, especially at the early going in other places. But we're at the situation where to really stave off more of a crisis, we need to really get our arms around this as a country. So I think it was, Mr. Nance said, even if I don't agree with President Trump, I'm rooting for that administration to do something better here. I think we've got to really follow some basic kind of quarantine-like procedures. I think that's what's coming down the pike from different states that have, like ours here in Virginia, that have declared a state of emergency. And really make sure that we keep that distance from folks and avoid large gatherings and seeing the extremity of everything and the urgency of it is really important. I mean, people need to take care of one another, as the general said. It's like really make sure that we're washing our hands, that we're using hand sanitizer, that we're really limiting our contact in large groups, and that's what we can do right now.
Speaking of that, we have seen cities and states, some are limiting groups to 250, some 500, some 1,000. What's the number? I mean, that's like a range. Like I'm just trying to understand how you even get to that number.
I mean, I think it's, it's a bit of guesswork there. I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm a molecular biologist. I'm the kind of person that can actually pull apart a virus, right? So I can take a virus apart at the molecular level, design a test for it, et cetera, and try to design some treatments. I think what this whole thing has shown me, I mean, to answer your question, I don't know how they arrive at that number per se, honestly, I think the safe number is, as few as possible right now, right? It's like just try to kind of keep yourself, as isolated as you can, unfortunately, for the time being, to sort of let it pass in terms of not having it spread from person to person. One of the real dangerous things about this virus is that you can have asymptomatic carriers. That is, people that don't appear to be that sick that can pass it on, right? And it seems that you've got about 2% of the people that get it that are dying from it. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's just scary because if you've got millions and millions of people getting it, that means a lot of folks are going to die. So I think, Dr. Fauci and others who've reported on it have said that it's about 10 times more lethal than the flu. So that's something to consider. But that said, 98% of people are going to recover, right? So it's like if you can just sort of keep it so that folks aren't spreading it as fast. You really want to just keep that risk of spread down. That's why you're going to have these quarantine measures that have to be followed.
Okay, so on that point, it's a perfect example. So when I was in Chicago for the NBA All-Star Game, so this had to be February 15th, I get into an Uber, and this driver had some kind of scent, and it was an awful scent, and it immediately kicked in my allergies. I'm talking about immediate. When I say immediate, literally within the first 2 minutes, throat is scratchy, and it immediately hit me. So I come back, and so I'm dealing with allergies, and I got, of course, I got congestion. Pretty much that goes away, and still have a slight cough left. Part of the problem, though, for people out here is that, you can't tell what's what. Now, one of the things they said is that what you should do is you should hold your breath for 10 seconds. And if you don't cough in that 10 seconds, you're not having the lung issues tied to coronavirus. And so how do we tell people out there, because we're also in the middle of allergy season. So how do we deal with, allergies? Is it the flu? Is it coronavirus? What the hell?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to tell. I mean, again, coronavirus looks symptomologically-wise a lot like a common cold. And I think what you're going to have, and again, that's the need for social distancing, right? To sort of stand 6 feet away from people, washing your hands frequently, sanitizing your hands, trying not to touch your face. I mean, I think they say we on average touch our face about 100 times a day, right? Try not to do that, right?
Okay, hold on. So let's stop right
really
there.
Try to limit your contact.
So does not unpack that, okay?
Yeah.
Why can't we touch our face? Just explain to people
so
why.
What happens is like viruses are invisible, right? Like to the naked eye. This virus is between 80 and 160 nanometers. That naked eye can't see it. I can see it on an electron microscope, like in my lab, but that naked eye can't see it. So when someone coughs, it's in these microscopic, nanoscopic droplets, right? That you see, right? So what happens is these droplets get on surfaces, they can be on clothes, etc. So if you're touching doorknobs and if you're doing all of this stuff, then when you start touching your face, like your nose, your eyes, your mucous membranes, that's just giving the virus entry point, right? So that's when we say if you stop doing that, you're reducing the amount of times that you're putting yourself at risk of putting the virus in an area that it can enter your body. Your skin is a nice natural barrier, right? But your mucous membranes and your nasal passages are where viruses like to enter. So you really want to wash your hands to reduce the chance of you spreading that virus into those vulnerable areas.
See, and that's so weird because I think if the average person, if you probably set a camera up and just tape yourself for 5 minutes, it might be shocked to see how many times you actually touch your face.
I've touched my face about 5 times since we were talking, right? But my hands have been cleaned about 6 times since I came in my house. I'm like really, hypochondriac with it like that. I mean, I use a lot of sanitizer. I wash my hands as soon as I enter my home. And it's like, I wash them for at least 20 seconds. They say sing the happy birthday song. I mean, I'm very thorough with that. So, and I use a lot of lotion so they don't get dry. So I think what you really want to do is just do these basic precautions. I mean, hand washing right now, everyone's asking me, what can you do? I think right now we don't have a drug. We don't have a vaccine. That's some months off. And so right now everyone's going to have to practice these sort of quarantine procedures and also just really wash your hands and clean your hands with 60% or higher alcohol, hand sanitizer, and make sure you use good soap and water. That's the best you can do right now.
All right. Dr. Chashaka Cunningham, we shall appreciate it. Thanks a lot. An absolutely huge day. The World Health Organization, they have now declared an international pandemic as a result of the coronavirus, and talk about how things have changed dramatically since February 25th when the Trump administration came out and said, look, we pretty much got the airtight, this thing under control. Donald Trump said we got this thing down to zero. Well, if that's the case, why are we having more and more and more cases being confirmed every single day? All right, folks, if you look at here, here's the problem. We are so far behind in the testing. So look at this. As of right now, as of March 8th, in the United States, we've tested 1,707 people. Based upon our population of 329 million, that's 5 tests per 1 million. Look at South Korea. They've been far more aggressive in this. They've tested 189,000 people. That is nearly 3,700 per 1 million. They have a total of 51.3 million. This, folks, shows you what happens when you have idiots who are running the whole process. States all across the country have been saying that, look, we need some sort of leadership from the United States. Well, Dr. Fauci, who testified today before Congress, he said this thing is going to get worse before it gets better. Listen to this.
Based upon the current trajectory, how many people do you think will get this new virus, and how many people do you think will die?
You cannot predict, and that's.
I know you can't predict, but there must be. We have a graph. We have the beginning of a graph. We know this is going to go up. We have the experience of China. We have the experience of Italy.
Yeah.
Can you give us some projections?
It is going to be totally dependent upon how we respond to it. So I can't give you a number. If we now sit back complacently.
I'm not asking to be complacent. I'm asking for a realistic. I mean, that's what the public is looking for.
I can't give you a realistic number until we put into the factor of how we respond. If we are complacent and don't do really aggressive containment and mitigation, the number could go way up and be involved in many, many millions. If we taught to contain, we could flatten it. So there's no number answer to your question until we act upon it.
Based upon the current trajectory, how many people?
All right, folks, that is Dr. Anthony Fauci. He is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, one of the best and brightest in this country. Unfortunately, you do not have the best and brightest who are actually running this whole process when it comes to the White House. They've been given so many conflicting information, especially the problem is coming from Donald Trump himself. In fact, he was just tweeting today complaining about everyone else and what they are doing as opposed to focus on trying to keep America's calm. In fact, here was a tweet that was sent out that I thought was quite interesting. Right here, go right here, folks. Jim Sciutto. This is what he put it out. Trump last week, coronavirus cases going very substantially down. Fauci today, the bottom line, it's going to get worse. Trump will have a vaccine in months. Fauci, vaccine in a year to year and a half. Trump, the death rate is going to be way under 1%. Fauci, death rate 1%. 10 times more lethal than the flu. Y'all, that's what's going on here. Also, Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., has declared a state of emergency in the nation's capital as well as a result of this. You've also had Jay Inslee. Of course, Jay Inslee, he is the governor of the state of Washington. He stood before the cameras and declared that they are barring any events taking place out with 250 or more people in 3 separate counties. He has been, of course, one of the folks who has been extremely vigorous in combating this whole issue. The problem, though, is you've had over here, Donald Trump constantly fighting with him, calling him out, calling him utterly ridiculous as well. And so that's what's going on here in New York State, where the National Guard has established this perimeter around New Rochelle as well. It just goes on and on and on. Let's go to our panel. A. Scott Bolden is the former chair of National Bar Association Political Action Committee. Lauren Victoria Burke, writer with NMPA, and Derek Holly, president, Reaching America podcast political analyst. Folks, again, what we are facing here is, I reiterate this again. Yesterday, I played the video of Larry Kudlow, the president's chief economic advisor, going on CNBC on February 25th saying this is, quote, to airtight contained. That's literally what he said, Derek. The crazy thing is you had Trump going to the CDC, interrupting the experts. If anybody wants a test, they get a test. Anybody. They want a test, they get a test.
True.
That's a lie. And so the problem here is, this is, and this is the thing that jumps out. For all these MAGA folks who run their mouths, this is where you want government. This is where government matters. And you have somebody who came in and just gutted government in many ways, lots of jobs that are unfulfilled, and now we're seeing what happens when you don't have a proper response to a growing crisis.
Well, you know,
Derek.
our...
Hold on. I said Derek.
It's a growing crisis, yeah. And yeah, Trump puts his foot in his mouth a lot with this whole, from the beginning on this particular issue. But I think it comes down to government, as you stated, but it's going to be local government that needs to get involved in this. And I think that's what the case is. They had a governor on, a mayor of a town in New Jersey who had one of the first cases in New Jersey. A 67-year-old woman passed away. But they feel like right now that they've gotten a handle on the whole entire situation. And he's pointed to the fact that most of the people, they're going to have to, the result is that we're going to have to deal with local government. He also talked about, he also talked about, the last thing I'll just add before you dump in, yeah, they can't get the test. That's a problem. But the other thing, the point I was going to make is what the media is not talking about is the number of people who have recovered from this coronavirus. And I think that's something huge that needs to be put out there.
Okay.
Because he talked about the number of people in his community. He talked about the number of one person who died, but he talked about the thousands of people who have recovered.
Okay, but here's the issue here, and this is where you have to understand. I get this whole idea of it's local government, but the federal government was the one that rejected the World Health Organization offer of help when it came to the testing. Now, we develop our own. You look at what's happening in Australia, where they literally have drive-through testing. Hasn't even happened here. Right. You have, where they announced, we're going to have 1 million tests by the end of the week. Then we get to Friday, we're not going to have those. And so that's the problem here. Local and state governments, again, I use Jay Inslee, the governor of the state of Washington State. Here he was trying to lead. You've got Trump slamming him and trashing him because he was critical. I'm sorry, in a health crisis, you do not need the president of the United States trashing governors who are dealing with people who are getting sick or who may very well die.
Yeah. Well, this is the non-reality, though. And this is where his lies and promotions, if you will, of everything's fine and positive, the rubber meets the road when you're talking about a health crisis, a world pandemic health crisis that's been labeled by the World Health Organization. On these local governments, though, they're relying on the federal government to have these tests. I know 2 people who have the corona have gone to the hospital and their doctors to be tested, and the kits aren't available here in the DMV. Here in the DMV. And so the president, I said I knew them. I didn't say it. I was hanging out with them. But the president and
there's some hospitals that don't even want to test.
Exactly.
It's like, look, we don't want to know what you got, because the moment they test positive, it changes their whole protocol.
Exactly.
Okay, that's kind of scary that a hospital's kind of like, hey, I need you to go ahead home. We ain't testing you.
Oh, but they have to quarantine them, and then that's a huge expense. And insurance care. Watch and see what the indirect or the secondary cost is. So, for example, in Washington, it is gala season. There must be 10 or 12 galas in the next 3 to 6 months.
Around the country.
Okay, around the country, right?
First of all, game this whole thing out. Nonprofits and galas. Church services. I'm already getting text messages from people who are saying that they're going to church online. So here's the whole. So all of a sudden, when you start talking about, Lauren, what's happening right now, stock market again down huge today as well. Okay, now it's lost more than 5,000 points in the past couple of weeks.
Right.
Now all of a sudden. Now it's going on and on and on. I mean, look, we're sitting here. We share an office with the folks at 50 CAN, Education Reform Group. Their staff work at home for the rest of the month because most of the people take the subway.
Right.
And so I don't think people really understand. Airlines have said that this is twice as worse than what they dealt with after 9/11.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, 9/11, though, had that element at least in the coming week there, of sort of knowing that it was, quote, over only because we stopped getting attacked after the first initial thing. This, of course, has the element of a complete sort of aura of unpredictability. You have absolutely no idea what's
There's
going
no
to happen
bottom.
next. And there's no protocol from this government. There's no plan. Obviously, the president's going to get on TV tonight at 9 o'clock and probably confuse everybody further. Because, as you know, as we sit here, Nancy Pelosi and him are not even on speaking terms. She has already said that the government has to continue working. They are out of session, at least the House is next week. So anything, obviously, that involves people gathering in a large sense is going to be canceled or disrupted, and that, of course, is going to have a rippling economic impact, to say the least. I actually do think that because power does love a vacuum, these state and local governments are going to have to step in. They really have absolutely no other choice.
No choice.
Of course, the problem is they don't have the power to do what the federal government can do with regard to resource, with regard to anything. So we're learning a lot more on watching like MSNBC and CNN and the doctors that are on there than we are from the President of the United States.
And now, hold on one second. Now we're getting what so Trump is going to be speaking in a primetime address on coronavirus again. It shows you how idiotic this man is, where he dismissed this. He was like, hey, this thing's going to go away, all sort of stuff along those lines, every single day.
He's a real estate agent. And he's a dumb real estate agent, right? He's a real estate agent that got $5 million from his dad to have his start, because he's not self-made like Michael Bloomberg. So this is a guy who apparently knows nothing about just the basics of strategy and planning in a crisis, right? I mean, you don't really have to be an expert in everything. You don't have to be Dr. Fauci, but you got to listen to the experts and give them the access to.
This is the same person who at the CDC who said, the doctors told me that I know so much about this that maybe I should have gone into this instead of running for president. Like, my uncle was a professor at MIT, and so smartness runs in our family. This idiot actually said that.
He's got exactly the wrong personality to fix any sort of problem, but particularly something like this that requires him to give deference to others who have expertise.
And here's the deal. Here's the deal. Okay, even though he absolutely screwed up how they handled the whole HIV needle issue in Indiana, actually dared the person who, in this crisis,
Pence is
the person who is actually looking like a leader is supposed to lead is Vice President Mike Pence, in terms of having twice daily briefings, pulling folks together, and then again,
and getting out of the way.
And you got this, this toddler over there who's kind of like, hey, can I get on the microphone? Hey, it's sort of like bringing your child to a news conference. And no, I'm telling you, dealing with Trump is the equivalent of I guess when Stephen Curry had Riley, his daughter, and she would be grabbing the microphone and she'd be like pointing to the press. That's Trump. It's like dealing with a grown-ass child.
Can I say something about local governments, though?
Hold on, finish your point.
Obviously, Trump, he's out of bounds on a lot of this stuff right now. He's out of control, and he's lost with this. But at the same time, as you pointed out, I'm glad that Pence is here to navigate this whole thing. And most of the time, as the president, you're supposed to look to your people and shut up. Unfortunately, he does not.
Or get out of the way.
And the problem here, Scott, the reason why this is such a problem is because what we're seeing with financial industry, what we're seeing with, all of these different sectors, what is the one thing he jumps to? Oh, we need a payroll tax. But the payroll tax only through the election.
Right.
See, again, what he's not doing is sitting the hell down and saying, okay, team, what we're about to endure is an economic calamity.
And this is our strategy.
And we need to, so what we need to do is
let's come up with a strategy.
Listen to your people. What is our short term, our mid term, our long term?
Exactly.
Look, I'm on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. Okay? We've got regional conventions coming up in the next 2 months. I'm Vice President Digital. We've got a national convention coming up in July 8th through 12th, which is the biggest economic. That convention, what we make from that convention, funds our entire organization.
For the year.
So, as a vice president, what do? Call our executive director. What's your plan? What are we doing? Here are our conference calls when it comes to whether or not we're going to cancel our regional conventions, whether we're going to continue them. If we do, are we offering refunds? We can go down the line into all the things that we're doing. We're not sitting here jumping, okay, cancel the convention. No, because we want to see what happens in March in April, in May, before we determine what we do in July. It's a methodical approach. What it's not is this, hey, no. Trump literally put a tweet out, hey, good time to buy some stocks.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally put that out there, and it was like, dude, do you see what's going on?
Dumb is dangerous.
You're lucky.
And we'll see tonight.
Dumb is
whether
real
I was thinking that
makes
tonight.
it tonight. Whether he makes it worse is the question. Frankly, I think the governors and the state and local officials, the mayors, et cetera, should really ignore him.
Right.
The problem is they can't completely ignore him because the
it's
federal
funded.
funding and the federal money is real. So hopefully the
Look,
members of Congress...
they asked Congress for $8.3 billion on this whole deal.
And hopefully the Republicans on the Senate side will figure out how to get him out of the way so he can just sign whatever he needs to sign.
And the $8.3 billion was specifically go to the states.
Right.
I mean, this is where in going back to January, this is where in moments of crisis, where again, all of a sudden it's okay. We gotta move billions now. Where can we take it from?
Right.
Where can we get it from? What can we do without having to even before we even go to Congress? Because you got to put together the right bill. Because here's the other piece, Scott. You got to know what to ask Congress for. You got to know whether, okay, are we asking Congress for $4 billion, or we're going to ask for $8.3 billion, and then all of a sudden, damn, we got to go back a week later and ask for $10 billion. I mean, it is understanding this process here, and the problem is, so you're dealing with you're dealing with, okay, all the crazy conservatives who were at CPAC, who was running around going, this not real, this not real.
Right.
And guess where one of the first cases in Washington, D.C. came from? CPAC.
Right.
But these local and state governments have to do something to manage their businesses in their region. So, for example, these nonprofits, the national NABJ is in the summertime, but some of these conferences and galas are happening right now. The hotels, up until today in D.C., were trying to enforce those agreements. They were accepting money, they got money, but they were enforcing these agreements. And nonprofits and several of my clients were arguing on the phone with me about what can we do about this. They're forcing us to put 1,000 people in a dining room for a gala when we know that's unhealthy and
wow,
unsafe.
hold on one second.
Hold
on one second. Breaking, the Senate GOP just blocked an emergency paid sick leave bill intended to deal with the fallout of a global pandemic.
Well, that's actually not that bill. If that's the bill I think it is that DeLauro?
I'll pull up in a second. Keep going.
That bill is not the actual
this bill
sort
put
of aid
forth by Democrats
for the emergency.
Right. But this bill put forth by Democrats would guarantee 14 days of paid leave for workers affected by the coronavirus. Because here's the problem right now.
Right.
Trump and his folks are only thinking about the corporation, how it impacts them.
And the stock market.
Here's the problem with what you're talking about. Okay, we just saw this with South by Southwest. Okay, they canceled South by Southwest. Monday, they laid off a third of their full-time staff.
Exactly. That's the second part of what I was going to say.
You mentioned the hotels.
Yeah.
Now, and again, I'm not taking up the hotel side, but here's the problem here. Hotels, anybody who understands the hotel business, a lot of those businesses in Austin, their year was predicated on South by Southwest.
Right.
That gets canceled. Now it's like, oh my God. So what then happens? Then all of a sudden, you might then have hotel layoffs, restaurant layoffs.
Right. It's domino effect.
All of a sudden. So now, what's now happening also, again, before I came on, 2 CBS News employees also now have coronavirus. Now they're moving on that. I talked to one woman who's a contributor for another network. She said because an employee at that network may have tested positive, they said, hey, why don't you do your hit by Skype? What people don't understand is they got to look beyond just, okay, well, this event got canceled. Oh, March Madness, no fans. Okay, understand what March Madness, no fans means. We're not
no jobs.
We're talking not necessarily people who work inside of the stadium. We're talking about all of the companies that were sending employees who had activations during March Madness at the stadiums, things outside.
Concerts.
So now we're talking about folks who I was talking to someone yesterday. This guy's a corporate. He's a planner. He's already had $100,000 in contracts that have been canceled. His business is conventions and planning and stuff along those lines. I mean, this thing and this is why the government response is so important. This is why the testing was so important, because and Trump's whole deal, I don't want to get them off the cruise ship because I don't really want the numbers to go up. No, you need to have a complete handle on what's going on here and how you separate, to your point, those who have gotten well and then those who sick. Italy, in 24 hours, 200 died in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's how real this thing is. And you can't have folks who are joking around.
But look at the irony that Trump's misleading statements or just lies and only being concerned about the stock market is actually contributing to the demise of the economy, which is one of his strongest political points, by him ignoring the reality of corona, by him saying that it's going away, that it's contained, there are lots of kits and so forth and so on.
But Lauren, this is where...
He had a previous idiot habit of always saying something stupid right before a market open, usually about China trade, and I can never figure out why.
The stock market rolling.
Right, no. But the point is, this is where, again, you cannot be a one-trick pony.
He's not even a one-trick pony.
I mean, this is one of those things where leaders have to step back and go, okay, this is not just about the stock market.
Right.
This is literally about the entire economic infrastructure.
There is going to be no choice for your local and state and your state, particularly state governments. Frankly, what is going to happen is that his decisions will be overtaken on the local level because they have no choice.
Right.
Without any leadership, with nobody leading from the top, you are going to have to make decisions that is like you see what Mayor Bowser just did.
But she's
not waiting for the federal government to do anything.
But there's only
the hospitality business or give some of these nonprofits cover for when they're trying to renegotiate these contracts.
Right. The problem is when you need that money that you're losing on the
there
business, which
there you go.
that's the problem.
So when Trump's farmers were losing money because of his tariff screw up, $30 billion.
Right.
Boom, here's $30 billion. Right. And so not only that, all the badgering he did at the Federal Reserve, pissing them off, to force him to lower the interest rates because he wanted the economy to keep humming. Right. Here's the problem. This is actually when your economic stimulus is even more so important. You shot your wad because your dumb ass pushed through this tax hike, this tax cut that cost $3 billion, and $3 trillion, and then the government already has had smaller revenue coming in, and so now you made yourself it made it even more difficult to make a financial move.
Which is why he keeps trying to cut food stamps to pay for that tax cut, right? So now you don't have that revenue coming in for that tax cut that you gave away to the top 1%. So there's that.
I just want people.
He's a piece of work.
And again, here's the deal, though. All people who are watching, I want you to be clear. This is not about creating panic. But you do have to pay attention to what is very basic. As you begin to see what is happening in other countries, the countries that moved quickly are the countries that are ahead of this game. People may say, no. This thing percolated in January. We pretty much screwed off a month. And when you're dealing with a pandemic, a month
is a lifetime.
Is a problem. When you overrule your CDC and the State Department says, put infected people on an airplane with people who are not infected and don't tell anybody.
I know.
You overrule the health people.
Right.
It's a problem. And so we're actually playing catch up right now because here's the other thing, Derek. The federal government is the only entity that has the power in an emergency to say, pharmaceuticals, come in. Mask makers, respiratory, come in. Yeah. We can exert a level. They're the only people who have that. Well, states, depending upon your state, how much power your governor has, but nobody has the level of power the federal government has. And we're playing catch up right now. And I've been talking to people who are local and state officials, and they said we have been put behind the 8 ball because of this sort of just who's on first thing in the federal government.
I agree with you. There's a lot of confusion going on. I mean, the messages are mixed coming from the White House, and the president needs to chill, be quiet. But where I don't agree is that where another country is ahead of us on this right here. And I look at that because
they are ahead of us.
I look at it
Just look at the
as the
numbers.
number of deaths in this country compared to other countries. How can you say that they're ahead of us when we have
because
less
they've
deaths?
tested more people.
Yes.
per capita.
We don't
Yes,
know what we don't know.
they've
We don't
tested
actually
more
know that.
people.
Okay.
But more people have died in other countries than here. So how the hell are they ahead of us?
Wait a minute. Follow here.
How are they ahead of us?
I will show you. And I will use.
I don't think there's any other
will
metric
show
other than
you.
death.
No, Derek. It's also when did it start? Perfect example. If I'm
alive, I'm still here.
No, Derek, follow me, Derek. So let's say you're America.
That's true.
Let's say you're America. You're
That's
America.
not a hell of a metric.
No, Derek, wait a minute. You're America. Scott's Europe. Okay.
I don't want to be Europe.
Deal with it, okay? So Scott's over here is China, Europe, and all that sort of stuff. It's called making its way.
Mm-hmm.
The deal. Now follow me here. So if it's been there for like a month and a half, and it's been building and numbers been growing, it's making its way.
Mm-hmm.
It's building. Then all of a sudden, as it makes its way, you're obviously going to have fewer numbers because it hasn't spread. Now, let me stop right there. Let me go back to February 25th. Trump says, go back to that date. What were we told? We got, maybe about 15 cases. That's 15. Where are we now? Pull the chart up. Where are we now?
We don't know because we ain't
No,
got
no,
no.
no.
We do
So
know.
stop right there. Hold up. Hold up. Wait a minute. So we've gone from that's tested. That's tested.
Correct.
We had less than 100 that was tested 3 weeks ago. Now here's the deal. You just said it. We haven't even tested enough people.
I agree with you.
So the problem is
they got it.
we haven't tested enough.
But ain't nobody dead.
Wait a minute.
Count the people that dead, right? Ain't that the metric that we're talking about right
Here's
now?
the deal.
The way you deal with this is you don't wait for people to drop dead.
Right.
You got to actually.
I'm gonna tell you something. What I
testing.
believe, this
And
thing was
basically-
here in the United States long. It was here.
Oh, here comes the
Conspiracy.
conspiracy.
I'm sorry.
Another
Based on what?
It's conspiracy.
Based on what?
You and I talked earlier.
Therapy.
And we both had. I was diagnosed as influenza B.
Okay.
Okay.
You don't have corona.
Yeah. You'd
Shorty.
be dead
It's
if
the
you had
same
corona.
symptom.
No, wait. Hold up. No, wait.
Oh my God.
Pull
Pull it up.
Hold up.
Pull it
Allow
up.
me to walk me
Pull
through.
it up.
Hold up.
Pull it up.
You were diagnosed with what?
Influenza B.
What were you prescribed?
Theraflu, whatever that
Tamiflu?
Tamiflu, yep. That.
Did it go away?
It did.
Okay. Do you know there's no vaccine for this?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay. So the difference here is they can't.
We don't know that, right?
Oh my God, we do.
You know the difference
Oh
between
my God, we
corona
do know
and
this.
influenza B.
We do know this.
They do know the difference.
First of all, one of the things the doctors, one of the things they said was, one of the easiest tests, they said, hold your breath for 10 seconds. And if you do not cough or let in those 10 seconds, then you more than likely are dealing with this because this is dealing with lungs.
That's right.
Okay, a very easy, just a simple thing to ask people to do. All right, if you exhale your breath for 10 seconds and you start coughing after 4 or 5, I'm just saying you can't say it's allergies. I'm just saying it's one of those things.
Everybody hold their breath. Let's see
what happens.
Because if somebody start coughing in them 10 seconds, I'm getting up.
All I'm saying this here is I want people watching. We do not want people to freak out. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. When you talk about just the utter nonsense that you hear coming out of the mouth of Donald Trump, how this man is so ignorant, he is so irresponsible that he will just say whatever the hell. He sat there, he has repeated over and over and over again that, well, if somebody if someone needs to get tested, it's not a problem. Oh, he's reached out to the insurance companies. They've said, no, we didn't say we're going to pay for the testing. No. They said, we will waive the copay. We're not paying for the testing. They also have the power. Greg mentioned Congresswoman Katie Porter of California. This is what she did today, challenging the director of the CDC on this very issue. Watch.
Dr. Kadlik, for someone without insurance, do you know the out-of-pocket cost of a complete blood count test?
No, ma'am, not immediately.
Do you have a ballpark?
With a copay, ma'am?
No, the out-of-pocket, just the typical cost.
I do not, ma'am.
Okay, a CBC typically costs about $36. What about the out-of-pocket cost for a complete metabolic panel?
Ma'am, I'd have to pass on that as well.
You have any idea? You want to take a ballpark?
I would say $75.
Okay, 58.
Getting closer.
How about flu A? The flu A test.
Ma'am, again, I would take a guess at about maybe 50.
43. Flu, this is like the Price is Right. Flu B.
Too high again. I would probably say 44.
That's good. How about the cost of an ER visit for someone identified as high severity and threat?
I'm sorry, ma'am, what was the question again?
How about the cost of an ER visit for somebody identified as having high severity or high threat?
High severity, but ma'am, that's probably about $3,000 to $5,000.
Okay. That is $1,151. This all totals up to $1,331. That's assuming they aren't kept in isolation. Isolation can add up for one family already, $4,000. And fear of these costs are going to keep people from being tested, from getting the care they need, and from keeping their communities safe. We live in a world where 40% of Americans cannot even afford a $400 unexpected expense. We live in a world where 33% of Americans put off medical treatment last year. And we have a $1,331 expense, conservatively, just for testing for the coronavirus. Dr. Redfield, do you want to know who has the coronavirus and who doesn't?
Yes.
Not just rich people, but everybody who might have the virus?
All of America.
Dr. Redfield, are you familiar with 42 CFR 71.30, excuse me? 42 CFR 71.30. The Code of Federal Regulations that applies to the CDC. 42 CFR 71.30.
I think if you could frame what it talks about, that would help me. I don't relate.
Dr. Redfield, I'm pretty well known as a questioner on the Hill for not tipping my hand. I literally communicated to your office last night and received confirmation that I was going to be asking you about 42 CFR 71.30. This provides the director may authorize payment for the care and treatment of individuals subject to medical exam, quarantine, isolation, and conditional release.
That I know about, and my office did tell me that. I just didn't know the numbers, ma'am. That's Congresswoman.
Great, so you're familiar. Dr. Redfield, will you commit to the CDC right now using that existing authority to pay for diagnostic testing free to every American regardless of insurance?
Well, I can say that we're going to do everything to make sure everybody can get the care they need.
Reclaiming my time. Dr. Redfield, you have the existing authority. Will you commit right now to using the authority that you have vested in you under law that provides in a public health emergency for testing, treatment, exam, isolation without cost, yes or no?
What I'm going to say is I'm going to review it in detail with CDC and the department.
Reclaiming my time. Dr. Redfield, respectfully, I wrote you this letter along with my colleagues, Rosa DeLaura and Lauren Underwood, Congressman Underwood and Congressman DeLaura. We wrote you this letter 1 week ago. We quoted that existing authority to you, and we laid out this problem. We asked for a response yesterday. The deadline and the time for delay has passed. Will you commit to invoking your existing authority under 42 CFR 71.30 to provide for coronavirus testing for every American regardless of insurance coverage?
What I was trying to say is that CDC is working with HHS now to see how we operationalize that.
Dr. Redfield, I hope that answer weighs heavily on you. because it is going to weigh very heavily on me and on every American family.
Our intent is to make sure every American gets the care and treatment they need at this time of this major epidemic, and I'm currently working with HHS to see how to best operationalize it.
Dr. Redfield, you don't need to do any work to operationalize. You need to make a commitment to the American people so they come in to get tested. You can operationalize the payment structure tomorrow.
I think you're an excellent questioner, so my answer is yes.
Excellent. Everybody in America hear that. You are eligible to go get tested for coronavirus and have that covered regardless of insurance. Please, if you believe you have the illness, follow precautions. Call first. Do everything the CDC and Dr. Fauci, God bless you, for guiding Americans in this time. But do not let a lack of insurance worsen this crisis.
And I would just like to echo what you said. It's a public health, a very important public health, that those individuals that are in the shadows can get the health care that they need during the time of us responding to this.
Jen Welker, of course, MSNBC, she had a question for Donald Trump that he still is yet to actually answer, and he blew it off. So here's what she asked.
So much, Mr. President. Dr. Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was, in fact, a failing. Do you take responsibility for that? And when can you guarantee that every single American who needs a test will be able to have a test? What's the date of that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all, because we were given a set of circumstances, and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time. Wasn't meant for this kind of an event with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. And what we've done is redesigned it very quickly with the help of the people behind me. And we're now in very, very strong shape. I think we'll be announcing, as I said, Sunday night. And this will start very quickly. And we'll have the ability to do in the millions over a very, very quick period of time. So no, and what we have done, and we are going to be leaving a very indelible print for the future in case something like this happens again. But it was and that's not the fault of anybody. And frankly, the old system worked very well for smaller numbers, much smaller numbers, but not for these kind of numbers. Tony, maybe you'd like to say something.
Will you have, yes, please, by Sunday night, will every American be able to get a test?
So just to reiterate what I said to many of you multiple times, it's a dissonance of a system. The system was not designed for what it was designed for. It worked very well. The CDC designed a good system. If you want to get the kind of blanket testing and availability that anybody can get it, or you could even do surveillance to find out what the penetrance is, you have to embrace the private sector. And this is exactly what you're seeing, because you can't do it without it. So when I said that, I meant the system was not designed for what we need. Now, looking forward, the system will take care of it.
Mr. President,
And
with respect,
interestingly, if you go back, please, if you go back to the swine flu, it was nothing like this. They didn't do testing like this, and actually they lost approximately 14,000 people, and they didn't do the testing. They started thinking about testing when it was far too late. What we've done, and one of the reasons I think people are respecting what we've done it very early. We've gotten it very early, and we've also kept a lot of people out.
Mr. President,
yes,
the
please,
last
go ahead.
administration
Please.
said that they had tested 1 million people at this point. You've been
Well, ask them
president
how
for
they did with the
3
swine
years.
flu. It was a disaster.
But with respect, you've been
Next,
president
please.
for 3 years,
Next,
and
please.
Wuhan was suffering.
They had a very big failure with swine flu, a very big failure.
President, I want to ask you about the Europe.
All right, folks, let's go to our panel. To my left, Brittany Lee Lewis. She's a political commentator. Also joining us is Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president, Emerita Bennett College, and Dr. Wilma Leon, host Inside the Issues on Sirius XM Radio. All right, folks, here's what's interesting. So Trump talked about, when he was sitting here going on, we've done this, we've done that. So Valerie Jarrett, of course, senior advisor to President Barack Obama, sent this tweet out responding to his tweet. Here we go to my iPad. It said, if the Barack Obama administration made testing harder, how do we manage to test 1 million people within the first month of the H1N1 outbreak? Why did you dismantle the White House office Barack Obama created in NSC post Ebola? Why did you cut funding to CDC? I mean, Brittany, those are critical issues that are important. And what you see is Donald Trump trying to, again, Obama. Everything is like with these old testing. It wasn't like, well, okay, we came in, had to change everything all around, when he's lying.
He is lying. And I mean, this is Donald Trump's thing, right? He's a celebrity at the end of the day. He's not a politician. He's not a professor. He's not someone that even essentially believes in science. So I don't know how we can expect him to handle this crisis and take it seriously. I mean, the second that he put his VP in charge of everything, I said, okay, we're doomed, essentially. And then even with some of the reporters that were asking him questions today, it was very clear that he's avoiding all types of responsibility.
Wilma, as I sat here and listened to that news conference, you're sitting here going, dude, can you just read what's in front of you? Could you just not ad-lib and start making shit up, which is what he was sitting here doing. And then you can always tell, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, this is big, it's the best. And then at one point he was like, America, we're ranked #1. I'm going, dude, this is not March Madness. This is not like a seeding where we have 4 #1 seeds. And see, and that's the deal. He wants to, what he does is, and this is what people need to understand, for 8 years, all the right did was attack Obama weak. America's bending down to everyone else. Weak. So his answer to everything is strength, strong. That's what he does, and that's all they hear. See, America, we're strong again. That's all that was.
Well, that goes back. I think it was Bill Clinton said it's better to be wrong and strong than weak and right. I think that was Bill Clinton that said that. In looking at the Wednesday night press conference and in looking at this foolishness, first of all, we got more disinformation and wrong information than we got actual information. And to Brittany's point, when you look at who Donald Trump has put in charge of managing this, I counted, I think we have at least 5 still living Surgeon Generals. They all should have been standing there behind the president with the current Surgeon General leading the pack, not Mike Pence, who, to Brittany's point, when he was, the governor of Indiana, right. We know what happened with the HIV rate in Indiana when he was there, went up through the roof because he doesn't believe in science.
But, Julian, if you're going to stand there and call for a national emergency, actually, I don't want to see CEOs or even scientists behind you. You know who I want to actually see behind you? Congressional leadership. I want to see Senate and House leaders. That's where a president leads. A president says, look, this is a national emergency. I want the leadership of this country. Now, you have your experts there. You have your CEOs there. You can bring them up to say, hey, this is what private and public companies are doing. This is what you can do all of that. No, but that's what you do. If you want to send the signal that we're all in this together, well, then what you don't do is you don't stand there and trash Democrats in the House like he did by saying, well, it's some stuff that they agreed to, but they didn't have. Something they've agreed to, but they haven't agreed to. He was making that up as well, and that's the fundamental problem. And I dare say, if you're Nancy Pelosi, the reason I'm not going to stand there with you because I know you're going to lie.
Well, Roland, both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders showed us what presidential leadership was. Both of them gave really great speeches that really laid out, this is what I would do, this is a template. Biden even generously said, and you can borrow it if you want to. But we know that we've known about this coronavirus since November, December. They have chosen to ignore it. This man, not only does he lie, I mean, that's the nicest thing that we can say about him is that he lies like a rug, like a rat, all that. But what we really need to say is that he's taken the people on a trip. And it's a contrast between what Biden and Bernie have said and what he says. Now, Fauci, the Dr. Fauci, CDC, he's been really quite blunt. He toned it down a little bit today, but this was a failure. It was simply a failure. And still we have not been able to catch. How does Korea catch people drive-by testing while we can't do general testing? So we really have a situation where, I'm so worried as an educator Graduations are being canceled, weddings and funerals.
First of all, all of that. First of all, in Texas, they're limited to size, 250 people, can't more than 250 people. And so now you have church services. I was watching just Wednesday night, Pastor Jenkins at First Baptist Glen Arden. I mean, look, they routinely have more than 2,000 people sitting there. They've canceled all of their events. And so what people need to understand, this has gone beyond sporting events and large gatherings. When you start saying you're canceling events of 250 people, you now even have, look, I'm on the board of NABJ. We had a regional conference coming up that was going to have 110 people. We had to cancel that. And we were actually going to allow it to move forward. But then other people kind of like, yo, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? So the pressure was there. So we had to postpone that as well. So what's now about to happen is you're not even going to have gatherings of 50 and 60 people. You're about to have an entire nation, again, for the next 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, that is essentially will be self-quarantining themselves because everything is getting canceled. You're not having conferences. Folks are not going to be going to church. They're not going to be going to meetings. Everything, if there's a situation where you got more than, frankly, 5 folks gathered, they ain't getting together out of fear of somebody sneezing or coughing or touching them.
Yeah, it's scary. And, you know, I think I fear most for the poor and working class people in this country at the end of the day, because you're thinking about people that live off of tipped wages. You're talking about those in, you know, DJs. You're talking about people who are, you know, cleaners who may not have the money to support themselves moving forward. And it's scary to me in which they're saying, well, the system isn't built to handle something like this. And they're really looking at the private sector. And it's very scary when we need to almost depend on the private sector to determine what the livelihood of these individuals is going to be moving forward.
Well, you know,
but the opportunity is here, though, for us to have direct. You heard what General Honore said. He said it is not that hard. Where you have, if FEMA is set up where they can simply go online or make a call, and then in 24 hours, $1,500 is in your account or is being mailed to you. And so we're seeing the Federal Reserve find $1.5 trillion when it comes to propping up these companies. Trump has floated out this payroll tax cut, all these different things. No, this is where you have to have direct infusion to people who are being impacted by this.
But what you have,
Julianne, go ahead.
What is going on here is that there's so many people in the gig economy. You're an Uber driver. Nobody is taking Ubers. And so you don't have any money. You can't show through payroll tax, et cetera, that you're missing money. So this is an elitist look at how we're going to deal with this. When the Fed says we're going to throw $1.5 billion in there, that's putting money into the system that's going to affect the top. And the question is, what's going to affect the bottom? And then we look at the sisters and brothers who are single moms and dads who you close a school, but they have a job. How does that work out? And there's no conversation about that. You look at the young people who are getting two meals a day from school. Now the schools are closed. How are we going to deal with that? There has been no creativity. I applaud Nancy Pelosi, my homegirl, San Francisco, but I applaud her, but at the same time, I'm struck by the way that this coronavirus lets us know so much more about the cracks in our foundation and the flaws in our infrastructure.
But Wilmer, here's a piece here, and I think that what we have to recognize is that when you hear Trump try to say, well, all this stuff beforehand, here's the reality. We've never had this type of thing beforehand. In the sense that you've never had something where, first of all, you were late with testing, so you frankly don't know. I mean, the most basic thing, then of course you heard the doctor sit up there, which, you know, I don't want to sit here and really put her on blast, but for her to stand here and talk about HIV/AIDS and what happened there and how, it took 4 years for us to do this, and 11 years of treatment. Okay, why is that also? Because the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, wouldn't even use the word. He wouldn't even use the phrase. And so I'm sitting there watching it going, hello, there's a reason why you were slow to do that, because same thing. You had individuals who had an ideological issue with gay people, who did not want to confront was a health crisis, did not contain it to bathhouses or whatever you want to do that was happening in San Francisco, and allowed that to turn into, yes, an international pandemic because of the games you're playing And we see the exact same thing happening here with an administration who put their head in the sand, who did not want to know what the numbers were because, oh no, I don't want this to affect my re-election. And so people are going to die because you are more concerned about your re-election.
Absolutely. General Honore is concerned about the American people. Mm-hmm. He always has been. His performance during Katrina proved that. What we see here is a president and an administration that is concerned about the elite. The payroll tax cut, that won't do anything for the average worker. And we have an economist here who can vouch for this. The tax cut is going to help business. It's a tax cut for businesses. It is not going to put any money in the pockets of the American worker. And also the Obama administration tried the same thing, and it didn't work under President Obama. So what we see here time and time again, it's not an accident that private sector companies are standing behind the president and really Congress is not there, because this is an opportunity for them to get contracts. This is an opportunity for them eventually to make a whole lot of money. This is Nero fiddling while Rome burned, even though fiddles weren't invented when Nero
Yeah, they were.
Nero.
Yeah, they were.
That was the loot. But anyway, this is a horrific display of what a president who focuses primarily on benefiting the elite. This is what happens. This is becoming a class issue.
Yep.
As average American citizens are going to find themselves, to your point, not getting their tips, not being able to go to work, not being able to afford their health care.
Having to pay more for child care. I mean, I'm really concerned about the child piece of it.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. As I said, folks, South by Southwest, the major show in Austin, Texas, has been canceled as a result of the coronavirus. The travel industry could be impacted by more than $100 billion. Conferences and cruises and all kinds of events all across the world are being canceled. The stock market, my Lord, down 4,000 points, wiping out the last 2 years. So what the hell do we do? Do we freak out, or do we sit tight and take advantage of the crisis? Joining us right now is Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Deborah, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, so 4,000 points gone. Last 2 years, Donald Trump is freaking the hell out because he wanted to run on the economy. He first told us, this coronavirus is no big deal. Y'all just go to work. Now he couldn't go to the CDC in Atlanta because somebody there had the coronavirus. So this thing is real, and actually it is spreading in the United States.
It's spreading, but what I say, Roland, is let's not panic. The truth is that
when folks can die from something, panic gonna happen.
Well, panic will happen, but the truth is that we've had all kinds of things happen in this country, and we've had the market be volatile. At the end of the day, what people need to understand is that the market was pretty much due for a correction. And so while everybody I talk to, oh yes, I'm an aggressive investor. Well, are you? Because this is what you should anticipate. If you have, let's say, 70% of your money in stocks, you should be prepared to see that investment go down by 60% in 1 year. Historically, that's what happens. However, I said, and even with the balanced portfolio, where you only have 50% in stocks or 50% in bonds, you should be ready to see your investment value go down by, in some cases, 30% in 1 year. The issue becomes that I just said go down. I said decline. You haven't lost anything until you sell. And what really disheartens me sometimes in our community, because many of us are investing in our 401ks, and we are basically choosing target funds or whatever the allocation is based on our age, we have no clue about what's in our investments or how to review them. So I like to give people strategies, and those strategies right now, just like you have the 3 R's in education, you have the 4 R's in financial education.
All right, what are those 4 R's?
This is what people need to be doing. The first thing they need to do is reassess. And when I say reassess, you thought you were an aggressive investor, or you thought you were okay with your money going down. Are you? Probably not. So the fact is that your money has probably appreciated, and you have more in stocks than you started out with when you started, right? So let's just say you were 3 years ago, your portfolio went up significantly, and so now you're sort of out of balance. Now you need to really look at, okay, how much should I have in stocks,
right,
and how much should I have in bonds? The second thing I want to say is review what you have. So many people are on autopilot. They don't even know what they have in their portfolio.
So if I got a mutual fund, I need to review what's in it?
Yes, you need to review what's in it.
Okay.
One of the easiest way to do that, Roland, is to go to Morningstar.com, which ranks mutual funds. And what they do is they rank mutual funds from 1 to 5 stars. It might so happen that your funds were doing well at one time, but they're not. So you want to make sure your funds are at 4
What's
stars
the website?
or more.
Morningstar?
Morningstar.com.
All right.
The next thing you want to do is you want to research. And so you're going to research at Morningstar.com, and you're going to look at how your investments perform in up and down markets. And you're going to, because they have what's called a beta, and it'll tell you, I'm not going to get too technical, but it basically tells you about volatility. And so if this makes you uncomfortable, now's the time to look at some funds perhaps that aren't volatile. And then last but not least, the last thing that folks need to do is reassess. Okay, so I just gave you 3 other R's. Now you're going to look at rebalance your portfolio. Okay, so how much should you have in stocks? How much should you have in bonds? How much should you have in cash? For most people, their money's in their 401k. It's retirement money. You should still be somewhat you should still be in growth mode. And in fact, what I would encourage folks to do is now's the time perhaps to, if you do invest in individual stocks, to take a look at what are some of those companies who have fallen, okay, just based on panic. And yet what makes the stock's price go up are their earnings, their future growth, and all of that. So I look at this in many cases as an opportunity for folks, hey, stocks are on sale.
So, okay, so
you run out to the store when things are on sale, but I do say proceed with caution and do your homework.
So I'm trying to, okay, so you said you go to Morningstar to figure out how your fund is doing.
Right.
So where, here, go to my iPad.
So you go to Morningstar.com.
Right.
Right, and so name one of your funds.
Ariel.
So which fund? So if you put Ariel.
We're in the search box?
Yeah, right in the search box. It's going to come up with 5 letters. All mutual funds have 5 letters in their ticker symbol.
Right.
Okay. And so if you put that fund in, name in, it'll come up with a ticker, and it'll take you to a portfolio review page.
Right.
And right up at the top, what you're going to see is how your fund,
so this Ariel fund, I don't know which one it is. I got you when I get home. So this Ariel fund investor has 2 stars.
Okay, yeah.
That sucks? Is that great?
2 out of 5.
That ain't halfway point.
It is what it is. But here's what they're driving, what's driving those stars, okay? What it's driving those stars are, what type of fund is it, and is that fund performing at least as well as its index? Meaning, if it's a large cap fund that has the S&P 500 stocks in it, is your fund performing at least with that benchmark? It needs to overperform it, though, because if that's the case, you might as well be at an index fund. The other thing it looks at is in its category. How is that fund performing versus other funds just like it? How is it ranked?
All right, so if I got a fund and it's sitting around at 1 or 2 stars,
you got
more money?
You need to rebalance. Yeah, you need to.
Okay, when you say rebalance, it means move your money somewhere else.
Move your money, right. So you need to look at where are the other opportunities, where are the funds that have consistently performed and have a 4 or 5 star ranking. That's one of the first things you should do in your portfolio.
So shouldn't your financial advisor also be giving you that advice?
Absolutely. That's what you pay him for.
Or her.
But what I would say is that
Mine is here right now.
So why you gonna put me on Front Street like that, Roland? Why?
Toy Salter, you ain't sent me a damn email or phone call. You ain't done shit. Not a damn thing. Toy Salter.
Why?
T-O-I-S-A-L-T-E-R.
Why does he
You have not given me any of it. Toy, when the show is over, you are going to do your damn job. No, your job is to advise.
That's not my job.
Hey, y'all, that is your job. That is your job now.
Oh my!
Yes, y'all, she's black.
So is that why you invited me on the show?
No, we need to have this conversation. The people out there don't know. Y'all got any questions? Y'all got questions?
No, I
Santiago, you got questions?
No, I'm good.
Y'all good?
I'm good.
Have y'all rebalanced? Hell no.
I bought.
Huh?
I bought.
You bought?
I bought, yes.
Okay,
When?
that's good.
Wednesday.
Because like if
one last
Because
thing.
here on Morningstar, Deborah, I'm looking on here. These health stocks, one was up 48%, another was up 12%. Oil went down 10%. They're going to cut production because of demand. But General Electric down 6.5%. Bank of America down 4%. But again, there's one health stock up 12.62. One is up 43.78.
Yes, but okay,
What
let's
does that
talk
mean?
about that. That is short-term volatility,
Got it.
right? And so that's demand. People saying, "Oh, where's the opportunity? Healthcare? Who's going to come up with the cure or the vaccine for coronavirus?" At the end of the day, what people need to do is most people are in mutual funds. If they follow those 4 steps that we just talked about this evening, they'll be fine in the long run.
Sounds good. Where people we get more information, Deborah?
They can go to my website, DeborahWoods.com. And by the way, if they want to get a free CD on investing in volatile times that goes over these principles, they just go to DeborahWoods.com, Uncertain Times.
All right. Deborah, sounds good. Certainly appreciate it. Here, I'm going to break this thing down. Of course, political leaders have announced that a deal has been struck. This is Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier today.
Good afternoon. Over the last several weeks, our nation has been faced with a grave and accelerating challenge, one that tests our compassion, ingenuity, and resolve, the coronavirus crisis. Sadly and prayerfully, we have learned of the tragic deaths of at least 41 Americans from this public health emergency so far. The American people expect and deserve a coordinated, science-based, and whole-of-government response to keep them and their loved ones safe. A response that puts families first to stimulate the economy. To put families first, last week the House passed a strong bipartisan $8.3 billion emergency funding package of entirely new funds. We made a well-funded, evidence-based investment in public health, in developing treatments and a vaccine available to all, in prevention, preparedness, and response measures, and helping state, local, tribal, and territorial hospitals and health systems, and in supporting impacted small businesses with SBA loans, and helping families by extending telemedicine services no matter where they live. Democrats' swift action to pass this emergency funding was essential to our nation's long overdue response. Next, Senate Democratic leader Schumer and I, last weekend, called for further action to put families first. Today, we are passing a bill that does just that, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which is focused directly on providing support for America's families, who must be our first priority. The 3 most important parts of this bill are testing, testing, testing. This legislation facilitates free coronavirus testing for everyone who needs a test, including the uninsured. We can only defeat this outbreak if we have an accurate determination of its scale and scope so that we can pursue the precise science-based response that is necessary. To put families first, our legislation secures paid leave with 2 weeks of paid sick leave and family and medical leave for those affected by the virus. And for those who lose their jobs, we are strengthening unemployment insurance, a critical step to protect workers' economic security. Putting families first, our legislation protects our children, and particularly the tens of millions of little children who rely on the free or reduced price lunch they receive at school for their food security. As schools are being closed, these children will be deprived of their meals. Our bill takes aggressive action to strengthen food security initiatives, including student meals, as well as SNAP, seniors' meals, and food banks. As we develop our next steps, we will continue to listen to and benefit from the expertise of scientists, healthcare professionals, public health officials, and community leaders so that we can craft the most effective evidence-based response. Our nation, our great nation, has faced crises before, and every time, thanks to the courage and optimism, patriotism, and perseverance of the American people, we have prevailed. Now, working together, we will once again prevail, and we will come out stronger than before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
As I said, so Politico has this story up on their site right now at 6:12 p.m. You can go to it, Henry. Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that she clinched a deal with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin on a large-scale coronavirus response package meant to provide paid leave for workers, expand food aid, and support widespread testing for the illness at no cost to patients. Of course, we just played you. That was the news conference was from earlier, and so now we actually have this here. The thing, Julian, was very interesting when you look at this thing from an economic standpoint. It's always amazing what people say we can't find money for, but now all of a sudden, Fed is $1.5 trillion injection. Initially, it was an $8.3 billion allocation from Congress. The declaring of a state of emergency, national emergency, is going to free up some $40 billion. Again, this is where, for all those people who talk, all those damn MAGA right-wing people who hate government.
Yes.
This is why you have government.
Precisely. I mean, I think when you look at, first of all, the efficacy of public health and the fact that basically this man came in and slashed public health. We know that when we have epidemics and pandemics, public health is what stops it. You can't do this in the private sector. You can't say, go get your doctor to give you a test when when other people in your neighborhood, in your community, in your house.
But the private sector also can't say, yo, they ain't paying for this. This is the power of government. When the government says testing is going to be free, do you understand? And big business goes, yes, Mr. President,
we understand.
We do.
So, as you say, this is a repudiation of the individualism of the Republican Party and of this man himself. It suggests that we are a community, as General Honore said, and that we have to behave like a community. More importantly, again, saluting Nancy Pelosi, but also hoping that the Senate, she has an agreement with Schumer, but where is Mitch McConnell? So hoping.
Well, no. That was that was announced. That's what she gave about 3 hours ago. Okay. So what happened was she gave that, and then of course they continued negotiations. So a little less than about 50 minutes ago, they announced the actual deal. So when Trump was up there complaining at that news conference, so that was about 4:30 when he was talking. What Democrats are not doing. The Democrats were negotiating. So their whole deal is they knew the Grim Reaper was going to say nothing. And so they were negotiating with Mnuchin in the White House. So when the White House signed off on it, then it was kind of like, okay, Mitch, get your ass in line, Brittany, because bottom line is they already agreed to it. So what you going to do? Hello. I mean, that's the only way you deal with McConnell. You got to cut the deal with the White House. And once they did, okay, now Mitch, if you got any problems, go talk to them.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how everything truly plays out moving forward. I know even just looking at like Italy, who suspended mortgages. I mean, are we really going to be doing these type of things for our lower and working class individuals fully? I mean, I think about those that have student loan debt that they need to pay back, high rents. I mean, I'm curious about what this is really going to look like on the ground.
Wilmer, Trump, in the announcement, they did not suspend student loan payments, only the interest on student loans.
It's all about the language. It's all about the bait and switch, and it's all about all sizzle and no steak. And that's what the president pretty much is offering. And again, we keep going. We also have to focus on these neoliberal policies, which are basically privatizing government operation, privatizing government function and responsibility, under the pretext or pretense of being more efficient. But in times like these, you need, to your point, an army. You need a government. Hence, China. What did they do in Wuhan province?
Completely built.
Shut the whole place down and built hospitals.
A damn hospital ground up.
No, they built 6 hospitals.
Ground up.
Ground up. And what is their exposure growth rate now? I think they had 8 cases from their reporting. They had 8 cases over the last day or two. So they're now on the downside of the curve in terms of this illness. We had Mike Pence on Sunday not even able to tell us how many people had been tested, or maybe it was Monday. He was on CNN and he wasn't able to tell us how many people had been tested.
Because the growth here has grown exponentially because we have not tested enough.
Because they don't have a website where all the data can be aggregated, but it's coming. Oh, it's coming.
Everything is coming.
The website is coming.
But meanwhile, we see this curve, and the curve has a slope that is frightening. And
no
we
question.
See,
and for what you say, look, we're trying for that curve not to be there. We're trying to lower it. But again, though.
But they don't know what the curve is.
Right. Go ahead.
There just hasn't been enough testing, and I think it's interesting to hear that, okay, we're going to give everyone free testing. But what happens when you've waited so long to test all these individuals and you realize you have hundreds of thousands of people that are infected and are continuing to affect other people? And then you're going to end up in a situation where you don't have enough, you don't have the capacity to treat all of these people.
There was a woman.
They're claiming, you know, in the next week you're going to have, 4 million tests. But remember,
they're 300 million.
But remember, last week they
2 million last week.
Last week they said we're gonna have 1 million by the end of the week, and they're like, oh, actually we're not.
But look, there was an attorney in New York who rides the train from Westchester into the city. He was diagnosed with the virus. He infected his wife and his 2 kids. His neighbor that took him to the hospital, he was infected. That guy's wife and 3 kids, all within the span of 48 hours.
Well,
and we're supposed to wait another week, another 10 days, another 3 weeks.
Real quick.
But this is happening again and again and again because they refuse to step up. And, Pence and 45 have said anybody can have a test when they want to, but that's just not happening. And we don't even know who's infecting who. But what we do know is not to throw stones. All of this could have been prevented, and even now there are the resources to create and provide more tests. We have 320-some million people in this country. They're talking about 2 million tests. Give me a break.
Again, but the point is here, this is what happens why you have government. And for the people who say they hate government, and for the people who want to say, oh, we need to get rid of government, get rid of bureaucrats, part of the problem here is that private sector can't do all of this. They can't because they don't have the same capacity to order things like government does. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, so a lot of y'all are always asking me about some of the pocket squares that I wear. Now, Robert don't have one on. Now, I don't particularly like the white pocket squares. I don't like even the silk ones. And so I was reading GQ magazine a number of years ago, and I saw this guy who had this pocket square here, and it looks like a flower. This is called a shibori pocket square. This is how the Japanese manipulate the fabric to create this sort of flower effect. So I'm going to take it out and then place it in my hand so you see what it looks like. And I said, man, this is pretty cool. And so I tracked down, it took me a year to find a company that did it. And so they make these about 47 different colors. And so I love them because, again, as men, we don't have many accessories to wear, so we don't have many options. And so this is really a pretty cool pocket square. Now, what I love about this here is you saw when it's in the pocket, it gives you that flower effect like that. But if I wanted to also, because if I flip it and turn it over, it actually gives me a different type of texture. And so therefore it gives me a different look. So there you go. So if you actually want to get one of these shibori pocket squares, we have them in 47 different colors. All you got to do is go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All right, so first of all, that graphic is way too small. So tomorrow we're going to run it right down here all across the screen. So it's RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All you got to do is go to my website and you can actually get this. Now, for those of you who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club, there's a discount for you to get our pocket squares. That's why you also got to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. And so that's what we want you to do. And so it's pretty cool. So if you want to jazz your look up, you can do that. In addition, y'all see me with some of the feather pocket squares. My sister, who's a designer, she actually makes these. They're all custom made. So when you also go to the website, you can also order one of the customized feather pocket squares right there at RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So please do so. And of course, that goes to support the show. And again, if you're a Bring the Funk fan club member, you get a discount. This is why you should join the fan club. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
Hey everybody, this is Sherry Shepherd. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, and while he's doing Unfiltered, I'm practicing the wobble. Yes, I am. Because Roland Martin's the one, he will do it backwards, he will do it on the side. He messes everybody up when he gets into the wobble, because he doesn't know how to do it, so he does it backwards. And it just messes me up every single time. So, I'm working on it. I got it. You got Roland Martin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Mac Wiles, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up, y'all? It's Ryan Destiny, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What up, Lana Well, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay woke.
This is Director X, the director of Superfly on the red carpet or the black carpet, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Lex Scott Davis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.